This episode of The Witch Wave is brought to you by the Witch Summit. The Witch Summit is a magical conference happening this year on October 4th in Phoenix, Arizona. It was created to curate immersive experiences that foster community, nurture magical education, share transformative witchcraft from all cultures, amplify activist voices, and elevate small businesses. There will be speakers, authors, hands-on workshops, a marketplace, and a bewitching ball. Speakers include Maria Minnis, Mavis Lynn, Iyami Ajay, Marcella Kroll, and yours truly. Yes, indeed, I have the great honor of being the keynote speaker this year, and I just can't wait. So come join us at the Witch Summit in Phoenix, Arizona on October 4th. Tickets are on sale now at thewitchsummit.com/tickets. See you there. Hello, my friend. I am often asked about how people can get even more witch wave and more magic in their lives overall, and I have the answer. You can join me over on the Witch Wave Patreon. This is how you can hear from me and my other magical guests on a weekly basis via my Witch Wave Plus bi-weekly bonus episodes. And you get the regular Witch Wave episodes ad-free, and you get detailed show notes for all of it. And all Patreon members also get access to my monthly ritual workshops, which you can attend live or watch the recording of at your leisure throughout the month. Rewards for some tiers also include magical merch and contests where you can win witchly prizes, as well as early heads up about my workshops before they sell out, and opportunities to work with me one-on-one. And all backers get access to our exclusive digital coven, where you can connect to a community of other wonderful Witch Wave witches around the world. So head on over to patreon.com/witchwave and sign up. It's a magnificent way to get more magic in your life and to support the show. Thank you so much.
The world is filled with bewitching people, and you might be one too. Welcome to the podcast where art is magic, magic is real, and reality is stranger than dreams. I'm Pam Grossman, and this is The Witch Wave.
Hello and welcome to the Witch Wave. My goodness, we have a lot to talk about today, and my voice is a little bit hoarse because it was a hell of a weekend in the best possible way. So yes, indeed, this past Friday, which was Valentine's Day and happened to be my birthday, I had the wild honor of being part of Jinkx Monsoon's Carnegie Hall show. And to cut to the chase, it was spectacular. First of all, Jinkx is simply one of the most gifted performers on the planet, and watching her over the years just keep ascending and expanding from being a 2-time winner of RuPaul's Drag Race to becoming a Broadway star to being on Doctor Who and on, has just been so gratifying for those of us who love her and are fans and friends of hers. But Carnegie Hall is next level. And even if I wasn't part of this show, I would have undoubtedly made sure I was in the audience for it to cheer her on and to witness this epic moment. And my gods, was it epic. She was hilarious and vulnerable and dazzling, and she sang the motherfucking house down. And I couldn't be prouder to watch her slaughter the whole performance. She devoured it with salt, pepper, and extra Parmesan, baby. She gobbled it up. But yes, to my astonished delight, I was part of this show. A small part, but a part nonetheless. And here's a little bit of backstory on all of this. So in July of last year, I get this FaceTime call from Jinkx telling me about the Carnegie show and inviting me to do a love spell as part of it. And now here is some backstory to the backstory. So when I was young, I was a performer. I went to a pretty serious performing arts camp as a kid, and I was, I'll just say it, a bit of a star. I played Lola in Damn Yankees, and as part of that, I did a striptease with braces and no boobs, mind you, and Morgan Freeman himself was in the audience. Not for me, for his granddaughter, but that's another story. And I was Joseph in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and they wanted to cast me as Mama Rose in Gypsy, but I was like 12 at the time, so they thought the actual teenagers would be displeased with that turn of events, and so I ended up playing June instead. And on top of that, so many of my favorite musicians are theatrical, and they're shapeshifters like Bjork and Bowie and Beyonce, all the bees. They've worn fantastical costumes, and their performances I see as a form of glamour magic. And when I got older, I wrote and recorded some songs, and I tried being in bands in my 20s, but that never quite took for many, many reasons, which we don't have time to get into on this episode. But I was okay with it because all along I was also a writer and an artist, and I had all these other modes of creative expression. And to be clear, I'm very happy and very grateful with where these creative pursuits have taken me. And even some of what I do now, I suppose, is sort of a performance when I'm teaching or leading rituals or the occasions when I'm appearing on TV. But if I'm being super honest, there has always been a part of me that has felt meant to wear costumes and make music and magic on a stage. And I don't know why, even now, I feel self-conscious about saying that out loud, but it is just a fact of my life. And so I've been feeling that call growing stronger and louder over the last few years. There's this famous in my family photograph of me when I'm about 3 years old, and I'm singing into the mirror using my mom's curling iron as a microphone. And I'm just totally absorbed in the moment. I have no awareness of the camera. I'm just lost in joy and a complete lack of self-consciousness. And it's a treasured photo of mine, and I had lost the original for many, many years. But then all of a sudden, in April of 2023, I was going through old journals, and the photo just slipped out of one of the pages. And I knew that that was spirit telling me that my little inner child, my inner sparkling performer, was being beckoned, and that I shouldn't be afraid to shine in that way and to be seen. So anyhow, that's an intention that I've been holding in my heart since then. And various other things have happened in the last couple years, which have inspired me to be louder and take up more space and shine a bit brighter. And so lo and behold, last year, I get this invitation from Jinkx. And of course, I said yes immediately. But I mean, fuck, I've done some intimidating, cool things in my life, but nothing like being on stage at Carnegie fucking Hall with one of the greatest performers that has ever lived. So I was excited, and I was also really anxious, but I knew in my bones that it was meant to be for whatever reason. And just to be clear, this wasn't only so I could be a star for 5 minutes on stage and wear a fabulous costume, though my costume was fabulous. Thank you so much to Normandy Sherwood, and thank you to Leave Swenson for my glam. But it was also meaningful because what I was being asked to do was so much bigger than me. Jinkx wanted her night to be full of intentional magic, and she wanted me to assist her in that. What an honor, and it would have been no matter when this performance occurred. But it ended up being more timely and more necessary than we could have known when we were planning for this. Because when Jinkx invited me to do this last year, we didn't know that Trump would be president again on February 14th, 2025. And we certainly didn't know that the very same week of this performance, the National Park Service would scrub references to transgender and queer folks from the Stonewall Monument website, for fuck's sake. Blessed be Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. Or that Trump would announce that same week that the Kennedy Center would be banning drag shows. And so to be able to offer Jinkx's audience a ritual of love and healing was part of a much higher calling than me just getting to wear a beautiful dress and quote unquote perform. The ritual itself was so powerful. And as part of it, I knew that I wanted there to be a little bit of singing. And so we ended the spell with just one long chanted F note that the whole audience sang with us, because F is said to be a heart tone in certain esoteric practices. And when I was coming up with the ritual, I knew I wanted to have the audience sing because, first of all, music is magic. My intention word for 2025 is music, and so I'm being much more mindful about incorporating music into my own witchcraft and creative practices and life overall. And singing is a very ancient and powerful means of spell casting. And second of all, I wanted to give everyone there the gift of saying that we all got to sing at Carnegie Hall, if even for just a few brief seconds. And I will never forget the feeling of hearing all those voices reverberating through that splendid space. It was utterly enchanting. And so biggest thanks to Jinkx Monsoon and to Bendela Creme, who directed the show, and to Kenny Friend and everyone else involved. And thank you to the many, many of you who have been so supportive and vocal and excited about this on my behalf. And that's from things people said to me in person, but also online. And speaking of online, you can read the invocation that I wrote. I posted it over on my Phantasmaphile Instagram grid. Now, I don't know that any video of it will be coming out, but hopefully the audio will be released at some point. I know that that was recorded. But all of this to say, I am just so grateful to have taken part in such a musical, magical night. And speaking of music, I am also so grateful for the conversation that you're about to hear with my guest, Matt Marble, whose project, the American Museum of Paramusicology, is devoted to exploring the connections between music and magic. It is such a glorious chat, and it truly made my heart sing. But before we get to that, first, let's check and see what's come through on the Witch Wire.
Who is it?
Witches.
Hi, Pam. My name is Jenny, and I have
absolutely loved the podcast and have been an avid follower ever since I moved to Chicago in 2019. You answered one of my questions on the Witch Wire about my familiar Leo when he passed, who is a hognose snake, which to this day, I remember just feeling such giddy butterflies and hearing that my question was chosen. But the question that I wanted to pose today for the Witch Wire is the relationship between witchcraft and entrepreneurship. As a fellow artist and a singer and an actress, I have always kept my witchy practices very personal and haven't really, in my own way, I've integrated it into theater, but I've had a hard time really sort of taking the step of really turning it into a business or the relationship with magic and business. And how do you keep that not convoluted and still a sacred practice? Or how do you even use your magic to forward your entrepreneurship? And I know there's, money spells and confidence spells that I could do, but I really wanted to sort of hear your thoughts about it and your own personal journey on not only being such a fantastic practitioner, but traversing that bridge between having a private practice to also having it be a part of your career. Anyway, I hope you're doing well. Congratulations again on Carnegie Hall. You look like a goddess and happy birthday. Hope you had a wonderful time.
Hi, Jenny. It is so lovely to hear from you again, and thank you so much for your sweet words and for this question. So I love that you are integrating your magic into your artistic expression, whether overtly or covertly. And as you know, weaving together creativity and magic is a topic that is very close to my heart and central to so much of my work. But if I could tease out your question a little bit, it sounds like you're wondering how your witchcraft practice can help you grow your business and achieve more, I'll just call it broadly, success. And there's no need to dance around this topic. You're also wondering maybe how it can potentially help you make some more money. And look, we all have to pay for shit. There is no shame in wanting more ease and abundance in our lives. But I suppose one thing I'm not clear on is whether this entrepreneurship that you're talking about is a distinctly witchy business that you're trying to boost, or if you're asking more about how magic can help you boost any business or enterprise, witchy or not. But I'll answer this the best way that I'm able to, which is to say that our work and our magic are all extensions of ourselves. It's about where we are applying our intention, our attention, and our actions. How are we spending our precious energy and time while we're in these bodies, on this planet, in this lifetime, right? And so for me, when it comes to my business, which is currently the business of being a writer, a podcaster, a teacher, leading rituals, performing, so on, I absolutely have desires regarding goals I want to reach and financial, not just stability, but financial ease and prosperity is certainly part of those goals. But I'm very clear with myself and with spirit that everything I do needs to feel aligned. And it needs to feel in service of something greater than just my ego and myself. And it needs to have integrity and feel like a positive contribution to the world as far as I'm able to tell, right? And so when I'm asking spirit for guidance or assistance in my business, it is always with that framing. So I'll say things like, Spirit, please help me apply my gifts to the world and help me reach the most people who will benefit from encountering my work. Please help me do this with financial ease and integrity, and please help connect me to the people and resources who can help amplify magic and love in the world. It can really be that simple of a request. It doesn't have to be some big, elaborate spell, though, hey, knock yourself out if you want to do all the candles and bells and whistles. And I've said this many times, but it's worth repeating. Having an attitude of gratitude is one of the most powerful bits of magic you can practice, because taking the time to say, thank you, Spirit, for what you have already given me, and listing what those things are, rather than only focusing on what's next and on all the different new desires you may have. I mean, it's great to manifest, don't get me wrong, but pausing and taking a moment to say thank you for what Spirit has already helped me with and given to me has been a total game changer. And I say this all the time, but it's also just good magical manners. The more you appreciate what has been given to you, the more the giver will want to keep giving. So I know this is a very broad answer, but it's the best one that I'm able to give without knowing the specifics of your entrepreneurship. But just know that there is no shame in asking Spirit to help with business matters, because our business, our work, whatever that is an energy exchange. And magic can help us apply our energy in meaningful ways and collaborate with Spirit no matter what our work is. I hope that helps. And if not, Ginny, you are so welcome to send me a third question on this. And best of luck with all of your endeavors. Now, on to my guest. Matt Marble is an artist, author, audio producer, and director of the American Museum of Paramusicology, a wide-ranging project about the history of music and mysticism, which the Paris Review has called brilliant and humbling. Both creatively and through historical research, his work explores the inspired intersections of art and metaphysics and the intuitive disciplines they mutually employ. Matt is also the author of Buddhist Bubblegum, Esotericism in the Creative Process of Arthur Russell, which was called groundbreaking work by the New York Times. He is also the producer and host of Secret Sound, one of my very favorite podcasts, which explores the metaphysical biographies of American musicians. His other podcast, The Hidden Present, is an audio interview series exploring intuitive discipline and spiritual imagination. And he also publishes the monthly AMP Journal, which is spectacular as well. Matt's visual art and music are often rooted in his own dreamwork divination practice, the Ashtamira or Wandering Stars. He also has an album of solo acoustic guitar music called The Living Mirror. Matt joined me remotely from his home in Greensboro, North Carolina. And you can also watch the video of this interview over at my YouTube channel, which is at Phantasmaphile. Matt Marble, welcome to the Witch Wave.
Thank you, Pam. So wonderful to be here.
Are you kidding me? I have been looking forward to this so much. I can't even tell you. Not to put pressure on you, but I'm just such a fan of yours and of what you do, and have been an admirer from afar for a long time. So I'm very excited to get to see you and meet you. Thank you for doing this.
Same. The feeling was mutual.
Yay! So I want to start with just like the basic question, which is, you do so many different projects under the umbrella of the American Museum of Paramusicology. When you are asked to describe what that is, because I know there's many spokes on that wheel, how do you describe it?
Well, I like to think of it as honing in on the numinous experience that we can all kind of relate to in our lives. And I think artists and musicians relate to that especially strongly. And ultimately, for me, it means getting out of your way as an artist, and in terms of the thoughts that are going on in your head, as well as the noise in your life and the phenomenal limitations that we encounter. So by paramusicology, it's really trying to open us up in that way. And that's a kind of a liberating movement. And due to the traditions having this direct relationship to socio-political aspects of life, there's personal liberation and there's social liberation. And those two, I think, are especially important to kind of conceive together these days as well.
Yes. Oh, so beautifully said. And so the term paramusicology, am I correct in assuming you mean like metaphysicality? Like, how do you describe that word? Could you tease it out a little bit?
Yeah. Melvin Willen was the first to kind of coin that word in the 1990s. And he used it to refer to kind of pagan histories of music, as well as investigations into paranormal experiences of music. And so I'm not so interested in investigating like the legitimacy of claims and so forth. But what I've kind of done is really expand the umbrella of that term to encounter as many avenues to that as possible. And I focus on the artistic biography. So I'm interested in how these traditions really impact people's lives. And I'd say that's more what I'm sharing than anything, is kind of these windows into people's lives. And it often veers into extra musical territory as well, as the metaphysical traditions do. But also these people tend to have very interesting lives and kind of influencing culture in lots of different ways.
Yes. So under that umbrella of the museum, and am I correct that this is not yet a physical space? This is more of like a museum that transcends space and time?
Yes, there's a physical component to it, which I've kind of over the years been developing this kind of archive fever and collecting all kinds of rare recordings, rare books, rare photographs, letters, in some cases, extant archives of certain artists. That's been a big part of it. A lot of the stuff I offer kind of comes in through the archive.
And this archive, does it live in your home? Is this a place that one might be able to visit?
It is in my home. You're welcome to come by. I don't get many visitors in Greensboro, North Carolina, but feel free to stop by.
Careful. I'm going to take you up on that because I really want to see what you have in that collection. It sounds so fascinating. Do. And do you hope one day that this will be housed in a public museum or some kind of archive or public collection?
That would be dreamy. Foregoing that, I would love to see an exhibition of some kind at some point. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, I'm holding this intention with you. I see it in my mind's eye.
Thank you.
So one of the areas that you work in is also podcasting. You make this beautiful, exquisite show called The Secret Sound Podcast. And for those listening or watching, it's a subscriber-based model. I think it's $5 a month. The value you give us for $5 a month, I mean, it's absurd. Everybody needs to go and subscribe because that gives us access to 2 different podcasts you've done, correct? Let alone a journal that you write monthly and so on. Tell us a little bit more about this monthly membership and all your different offerings.
Well, thank you for saying that as well. The Secret Sound Podcast is behind there, and there's 43 episodes now. And I kind of took a pause from it for a while, but I'm actually starting new episodes right now. One on
thank God.
Yeah. One on this fascinating Pythagorean multimedia artist, Barbara Hero, who's just fascinating. But yes, with the $5 subscription, you get the access to the 43 episodes, some of which are available on the website for everyone. And then the monthly journal generally has some sort of historical essay that I'm working on, as well as an interview with contemporary musicians and artists. The next issue, for example, is going to feature C. Lavender, or Lavender Suarez, who's an amazing sound healer and composer.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, really wonderful.
So let's talk about the Secret Sound Podcast. I'm obsessed with it, but I'm also doing this weird thing where I'm not binging it because every episode is so, and I mean this as like the highest praise, it's dense, it's beautifully produced. I mean, my goodness, the amount of production that you put into each of these episodes, you know, it's not only you narrating and telling us about a metaphysical musician, but you're then playing us archival sound. You're obviously playing us samples of music when it's available. These are gorgeous, gorgeous episodes. So I confess I haven't listened to all of them yet because I'm kind of like doling them out slowly like delicious candy. But for our listeners who might not be familiar with the podcast yet, can you talk about some of the artists that you cover?
I kind of root all this work in the ancestors. So there's not a lot of living people that enter the Secret Sound podcast. I did one on David Lynch before he passed, and I highly recommend. That's a good place to start, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I did one on Louise Landis Levy, who's an incredible poet, musician, translator. She's still with us. But most of the podcasts are on historical figures, and some familiar, but I generally favor people who have been either kind of historically marginalized and forgotten or were not really known to begin with. Someone like Vincent Lopez, who was this kind of metaphysical band leader, the biggest band leader of his era, now completely forgotten, but was also a metaphysician and publishing books on all these topics and would do numerological readings on his stage shows and that kind of thing.
Incredible. What time period roughly was he in?
This is like the 40s,
Mm-hmm.
50s. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And some of the other names that were unfamiliar to me, we'll just start with the first two episodes. There's Francis Grierson and Catherine Ruth Heyman. Can you talk a little about those two and why you decided to start with them?
Yeah, Francis Grierson was the first kind of rabbit hole I went down. After writing Buddhist Bubblegum on Arthur Russell's use of Buddhism, I started looking backwards in time and looking for a lineage of artists that had nothing to do with style and everything to do with spirit and kind of magical approaches to music. And Francis was one of the first people that I kind of was looking into. He's pretty well known now as a psychic pianist.
He is not pretty well known, my friend.
Well, no.
For dorks like us. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep going.
Yeah. In the newspapers at the time, he was described as the strangest man in the world and all kinds of epithets like that. But he was so popular in his day that he was gifted by these wealthy architects a Victorian mansion custom designed for him to do musical seances.
The dream.
And, there are stories that he was like kind of tucking away people behind hidden walls to create sonic illusions. And he seemed to kind of navigate this in-between space of sincere dedication to these kind of metaphysical interests and also kind of putting on a show.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that, is specifically interesting with Francis is this kind of, he would oscillate back and forth, and his music was really kind of rooted in channeling either the spirits of deceased composers or kind of programmatic scenes from past lives and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a really imaginative, improvisatory practice that he was playing before kings and queens and dressed strangely and was just a force.
Incredible. And I'm trying to remember, because it's been a little while since I listened to that episode. Was he primarily a pianist or was he a composer? Both?
Primarily a pianist, and his name early on was Jesse Shepard, and he basically changed his name to Francis Grierson after kind of getting some flack for his mediumship, but then he transitioned into authorhood and published just a series of books, largely on metaphysics, on his travels and celebrity encounters, also one of the more kind of historically interesting takes on turn of the century America. But yeah, he was just a fascinating figure. Unfortunately, we don't have any recordings of him.
Yes, I know. That must be something that you come up against from time to time, especially with these, more ancestral kind of musicians. Yeah. So what made you choose Catherine Ruth Heyman as your second episode on the Secret Sound podcast?
Yeah, so my background is really in experimental music, free improv, avant-garde composition, so forth. And Catherine Ruth Heyman was this name I kept kind of coming across with a lot of the figures in that history, right? With Dane Rudyard, the astrologer, painter, composer,
yes.
Henry Cowell, who was at a theosophical commune as a teenager and went on to do very innovative work and influenced numerous composers like John Cage. And there's just this whole line of figures, Ruth Crawford Seeger as well, who were kind of gravitating around this woman in New York and in Chicago. And she would hold salons where she would kind of perform avant-garde music. She was a huge influencer as far as getting Scriabin's music out there. Right?
I love Scriabin. Yeah, I write about him a little bit in my new book. So,
oh, awesome.
I imagine a lot of people don't know who he is either. But anyway, I'm getting too excited. Keep going.
Yeah. In a nutshell, Russian composer who applied the teachings of the Theosophical Society, creating tone color fusions and color organs and so forth. So she was not only playing his piano music and getting it out there, touring it all over the world, she was also advocating these teachings, these metaphysical teachings with Theosophy and with Gurdjieff's teachings as well, George Gurdjieff.
Mm-hmm.
So she was introducing a lot of these young composers to these teachings. And kind of contrasting to a lot of the spiritualist and New Thought traditions that were influencing a lot of Americans at the time. Theosophy seemed to turn on kind of fixation on dissonance, really for the first time, where it was ultimately a way of conceiving cosmic sound, right? They were using their imagination to conceive cosmic sound and these kind of metaphysical ideas of sound and listening. And Henry Cowell's a great example because he developed the cluster technique, which was where he kind of flattened out the keys on the piano with a board or with his fists and would just play all the notes at once. And this was to evoke an Irish deity from Irish mythology.
Oh, yes. Put it in my veins, I'm telling you. I live for all of this. And when you say cosmic sound, is that the phrase you used? Am I correct in assuming that means like that there's this idea that sound is immanent in everything and including like on the spiritual realm? So they're trying to get to some kind of like universal energy field, or what exactly?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And the cosmos being also immanent within us.
Right.
That points to kind of another aspect of a lot of my research, which has to do with these kind of vibratory theologies that we can find in ancient Indian tradition with like Nada Brahman, with the African Bambara people who referred to a similar thing as yo, or Christian mystics referring to the logos, right? So throughout global metaphysics, we have this fundamental role of sound, which is essentially the bridge between mind and matter. And that's also kind of where the magical agency and discipline come into it. And just recently I read a book called Musicology of Religion. This just came out. It's pretty much an emergent field, really pioneered by this guy named Guy Beck. Very beautiful scholarship. And one thing I took away from the end of this book, he has like this little trinity of an idea, this kind of like universal key to why music and religion are so intricately intertwined throughout human history. And he points to ritual, sound, and music, and word or idea, thought, right?
Yes.
This is the ingredients for magic, right?
Absolutely.
To see a scholar kind of articulate that in such a simple way, it just points to the inherent aspect of that.
Oh, yeah. And I probably mention this too often. And again, I write about just the idea that the root word of the word enchant is the Latin incantare, which means to sing. And the idea of like song as a spell. These are such enchanting ideas. And I think it's something that we know, like we have like a deep knowingness, especially when we're children and our parents are singing to us lullabies to soothe us. Like there's something about music that is medicinal, therapeutic. It's an elixir. It can change our vibrations. It can possibly make things happen. I don't know. I just find it such a wonderful thought and something I think we intuit, but it's great that there's actual scholarship happening around these ideas now too.
Yeah, I was excited to see that.
Oh, how wonderful. On that note, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Hi, Witchwave listeners. Check out Crystal Ballers, a new podcast hosted by Britton LaRue and me, Natasha Levenger. If we're aligned with our joy, if we're aligned with our desires, it's much easier to know. We are going to listen to ourselves. We're going to create the life we want.
One of the number one consequences of shame, this energy of, I don't think I'm allowed to, which is why I say audacity is one of the key ingredients for unshaming, because it takes audacity to be the one to give yourself permission.
Would you like me to tell you what I picked up? And
you're like,
first time I was like, oh my God.
picked up.
Yes. You know, if you're giving your power away, then you can't feel your yeses. And so celebrating your uniqueness, celebrating your joy is a way to stay in your power.
There's a space for you to come and be seen and to see others and to create connectivity and community and sharing and celebrating and validating.
Listen to Crystal Ballers everywhere you get your podcasts.
The Witch Wave is sponsored by BetterHelp. What are some of your relationship green flags? We often hear about the red flags that we should avoid, but what if we focused more on looking for green flags in friends and partners? If you're not sure what they look like, therapy can help you identify green flags. These are the little signs that show us that someone is a good person, someone is cool, someone is worthy of our time and attention, and will hopefully be someone we can have a positive, healthy relationship with, whether that's a platonic friend, a potential coworker or collaborator, or a potential romantic interest. Some of my green flags are little things, like that they're kind of service people, like wait staff and bus drivers. Some of my medium green flags are like when a potential collaborator is willing to make time for a coffee or brainstorming session. And some of my big green flags are for things like if a person has a real attitude of gratitude and appreciation for the beauty and wonder and absurd hilarity of life, and they're not constantly complaining. I can't stand that. Look, some complaining is healthy, but if you also tell me about something wonderful you've noticed or experienced or learned, for me, those flags are green, green, green. And being able to identify these green flags are how we find good people to share our lives with. But it takes self-awareness and commitment to keep recognizing these positive signals. That is where therapy can help. And that is where therapy has helped me so much over the years. I know some people think therapy is just a place to vent and to experience catharsis, but it is also a place to help identify what is meaningful to you, what a positive relationship looks like, and what your green flags are. I've said it 1,000 times. I'll say it 1,001. If I could wave a magic wand and have everyone on earth go to therapy, I would. It has helped me so much. And now therapy is more accessible than ever with BetterHelp. BetterHelp is fully online, making therapy affordable and convenient, serving over 5 million people worldwide. You can access a diverse network of more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties. And you can easily switch therapists at any time at no extra cost. Discover your relationship green flags with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/witchwave today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.com/witchwave. Welcome back to the Witch Wave. So with the Secret Sound podcast, you also do talk about names that I think people will be a little bit more familiar with. I mean, your Alice Coltrane episode, it is so wonderful. And I'm so happy that she seems to finally be getting her due. I know there's going to be a huge retrospective of her at, I believe it's the Hammer Museum in LA soon. I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about her because I know folks probably know that she was John Coltrane's wife and that she was a genius in her own right. But what else do you think people should know about Alice?
She dedicated her life to the teachings, studying Sai Baba, studying Vedanta. And when you read her writings, her kind of scripture, essentially, she published her own kind of gospel. Just the things that she went through, from intentional starvation to burning herself with fire. I mean, it was very intense, the practices that she went through.
Ordeals.
Yeah, absolutely. So to purify herself in this way. And this is one thing I take a lot of inspiration from, and a lot of the figures that I look at is the dedication and the devotion to the practice, where it becomes the world that they live in. And those tend to be the people that inspire others. And just the way that she has continued to inspire others is something that speaks a lot to what she offered us and continues to offer us. But there is a book that's coming out pretty soon, Monument Eternal, if not out already. So I'm hoping that her writings can also get out there a little bit more. They're just really inspiring.
Oh, yeah. Talk about like pure genius. And her music is so gorgeous. I mean, what's a good sort of intro album that you would recommend for someone to get a taste of what Alice was cooking in her cauldron?
My favorite, and the one that I was first exposed to, was Turiya Sings. And this is incredible singing with just this kind of epic wash of synthesizers and talk about cosmic sound. She really captures something on that record, and every song is just so powerful and so softly strong. There's like such a strength in her softness that I hear in that particular album.
Oh,
It's just beautiful.
gorgeous. And when I think of her, I tend to think of harp. I mean, I think of
Hmm.
just all those like trilling, I don't know, the language is failing me right now, as it often does with music, but it just feels, yeah, it really feels like you're being leveled up somehow when you listen to her music. It's like
Absolutely.
communicating on this effervescent cellular level or something. She's just so unreal. What an incredible goddess of a composer and a player. I wish we could talk about like every episode, but everybody needs to go and listen to The Secret Sound. I'll just give a quick shout out to Exuma, who's one of my favorite musicians, born as Tony McKay. And I was so thrilled that you not only have an episode about him, but I watched your recent online lecture that you gave for the Philosophical Research Society. This lecture is called American Muse, A Brief History of American Metaphysical Music. It was so wonderful.
Thank you.
And the fact that you shouted him out there too made me so happy. So can you give just like the quickest little taste of Exuma for people before we expand into some of your other spokes on your cosmic wheel?
Yeah, Exuma, aka the Obeah Man,
Yes.
came from the Bahamas and to New York City at a time when the East Village was just flowering with people like Bob Dylan, John Lee Hooker, Nina Simone, and he was playing shows with all these people. Unlike them, he was drawing heavily from his Bahamian heritage and from the Obeah magic that was indigenous to that area, though at a time when colonial influence had really oppressed that in the Bahamas and that it was being rejected by the indigenous population. So he found kind of more reception for his Obeah heritage on the stages in the East Village than he did in his hometown. I mean, he was invoking deities on stage. He was really kind of putting on a performance, a ritual on stage. And you can kind of hear that in the music. He uses lots of extra musical sounds to evoke these things as well, and was just a force, very unique. And I just love the idea of it mixing with this kind of Americana that was forming in the East Village around that time. But really just powerful music and invoking the Orishas. Dambala is the track that I come back to a lot. And Nina Simone has done a beautiful cover of that as well.
Yes.
Yeah, really special, man.
It's such exquisite music. I highly recommend people listen to as much as they can get their ears on. So, one of the people that you both have an episode about, but someone who I actually think of you as perhaps an incarnation of, is Harry Smith.
Oh, wow. Thank you.
And, Harry Smith is someone who, again, he is just now, I think, getting some of the appreciation and love that he really deserved when he was still on this side of the veil. And I just think of him in terms of, obviously an archivist of music, certainly a visual artist, which you are as well, an anthropologist. He clearly was so interested in esotericism and magic. And there was a really lovely little retrospective of his films, but some of his visual art and some of the music that he collected at the Whitney, I believe it was in 2023. Yeah. And I'm wondering if you see him as a kindred spirit or a guiding spirit for the kind of work you're doing as an archivist and as a creator yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, he's been a huge influence on me. I kind of come back to this one, I forget even where I read it, probably in one of the books that are out there on him, but there's this scene where a friend is describing walking down the street with Harry, and he just crosses a trash can and suddenly just dives in and starts kind of taking all the contents out and arranging it on the sidewalk to the point where people start gathering around him, looking at what he's trying to figure out what he's doing. And it was just this kind of magical moment where he's kind of collaging discarded materials into something meaningful. And there's something so powerful in that idea that just putting things together that were not previously together before is a magical procedure and is very powerful in and of itself. So a lot of like the archival work I've done is really about making sure these objects are in one place together.
Yes.
And that's something I take directly from Harry, because any one of these artists and any one of these metaphysical traditions is supremely inspiring on their own. But there's like this third magic that happens when they come together in this way. So that's really a big part of what I do. And I draw a lot of that from hearing.
Absolutely. You're both alchemists in that regard, for sure. Now, I understand you're a musician yourself, you're a visual artist, and from what I've seen on your website, you're very talented at both of those things.
Thank you.
How has your own practice maybe shifted or changed based on the research and the archiving that you've been doing? Or did that begin? And I guess I'm asking, like, is it the chicken or the egg? Like, which came first, your research and then your creating? Or do they kind of feed each other at the same time?
They were an ignorant relationship for a long time. There were kind of two turning points. One, working on the dissertation on Arthur Russell, where I got kind of exposed to Vajrayana Buddhism and Tantric Buddhism for the first time in any kind of in-depth way. And that opened up a love for metaphysical philosophy in general, which I had previously kind of held at arm's length, distrusting the sensationalism of everything. So I was always drawn to mystical philosophy. But then I had a kind of a life falling apart experience, and then a dream woke me up at the beginning of the pandemic. And that caused me to kind of overcome some addictions and used dream work to do that and to essentially to create a discipline for myself. In fact, these were kind of what I used.
What are you pointing to, just for the listener?
These geometric, colorful geometries in a 81.
Oh, these are so beautiful. So for the listener, this is like I'll call it a grid with a lot of prismatic colors, different colors in each square, and then these patterns of triangles and circles and squares in varying concentricities, shall we say?
Perfect.
Is there anything you want to add to that?
No, that's a great description. And, I was studying alchemy and Jungian dream work at the time, but I was finding hangups on kind of the cultural language or the personifications that are kind of common. I needed something more abstract personally. So I've always been drawn to geometry since before I could speak. And so that's kind of my home language. I was able to work more with the abstractions that way and to kind of embed or encode my dreams into those images.
Whoa.
In a way that I could meditate with them.
Yes.
So since then, my art and music have largely come out of that practice. And that's another way I see it, as this kind of like super sensual root that I like to work from.
I don't want you to like give away all of your secrets, but do you feel comfortable maybe explaining what that means in practice? Like, let me back up and just say, this is making me think of the technique that's called incubatio or dream incubation. I know in ancient Greece, they would sometimes call this temple sleep. It's this idea that you can go to sleep with the intention of having some kind of a transformational or healing dream. Is that kind of the realm that you're working in, where you'll go to sleep with an intention in mind? Or I don't know, how does this work for you in as far as you care to share?
Yeah, I have done stuff like that before, but this particular practice is really after this kind of life-changing dream. I began looking back on dreams that I'd documented throughout my life and really collected essentially 9 kind of core dreams, which to me, I'm not interested in like interpreting the dream so much as getting back into the dream. And these were the most enigmatic dreams I've had, so the most open to interpretation.
Can I just jump in for clarity's sake? These are dreams that you have had over the course of your life. So you in the waking world were saying, what are the dreams that have left the biggest impression on me? And then you kind of cataloged those or archived those for yourself? Yeah. Okay, keep going.
Absolutely. And so each of these shapes offers a different combination of 3 dreams viewed from different angles, right? Different combinations. So that's a way for me to kind of reinvest myself in that dream or those dreams, but also to kind of see them through one another and to gain different insights. I mean, they all represent kind of different aspects to me: elemental, textural, sonic. I've kind of developed a vocabulary of associations, I guess.
Yeah, correspondences.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and again, I'm trying not to be too nosy, but I'm quite nosy. So that beautiful image that you shared with us, to understand that each of those symbols represents one of the dreams or an aspect of the dream. Is that right? Like, are all 9 dreams represented in that painting?
And the whole thing, yes. Each individual square contains 3 dreams and different arrangements. And one way I access that is numerologically. I'll just kind of sum up the date, and that determines where on the board I give my attention to. And I like the kind of randomness or synchronicity of that as well. But I felt crazy at times as I was putting this together because it was coming to me in dreams. And I've kind of given myself to that in a lot of ways. But whenever I was kind of overcome with doubt, I would work with it again and just find deep inspiration. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is why I do this.
Yeah. Are you open to adding to the 9 dreams? Like, can new dreams be part of this?
Yeah, so the way I've approached the 9 dreams is to kind of look at them as fundamental qualities or essences in life, and in the life that I know. And so any dreams I have can be kind of channeled into one of those streams, so to speak.
Okay.
That's a way I've really enjoyed working with it. And certain symbolisms kind of crop back up. Often animals and insects are kind of guiding figures or integrating figures, colors, and so forth.
How interesting. I love how this is still like not actually explaining anything. You're managing to still have these layers of secrets.
Lots of details.
No, I really appreciate it. You did reference one life-changing dream in particular. Is that a dream that you'd rather keep private?
I'm not a very private person.
Oh, good. Can you tell us all about the dream, the life-changing dream?
Well, this happened at a time during the pandemic when kind of alcoholism had swallowed a lot of my willpower. And I was refusing Alcoholics Anonymous because I was concerned that I would have bad experiences there. And so I was pushing that away. But this dream came 3 nights in a row. It came the same. I've never had that happen before. And the 3rd time I woke up, heart pounding, covered in sweat, wide awake, remembered every detail, walked outside, and then had an old man. This was when I was awake. An old man walked down the middle of the road and asked me to pray with him in the middle of the road. And I did that. And this was right as the sun was rising. And then after we prayed, he walked on, crossed the train tracks, and disappeared. And it was like out of a movie.
So that literally happened, or was that a waking vision of the old man?
That literally happened after I woke up.
Whoa.
So it felt like this, if nothing else, a confirmation to pay attention to what has happened.
Incredible.
And I took that as a strong sign to get myself together based on also aspects of the dream. And I made a vow at that time to dedicate myself to this work, to the secret sound work, which kind of evolved into the American Museum of Paramusicology. It's been challenging because I've been working lots of kind of low-wage jobs and just trying to get by, but I've made that vow to dedicate myself to the work, and I've continued to do that.
Matt, I'm so moved. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. And I really have chills. This feels like such a powerful act of devotion. And I mean, if I can just be one more voice, I'm sure other people have told you this, but what you're doing is so special and it's so meaningful to me. Like,
thank you.
And I know many more people feel the same way about what you're doing and will continue to. And you're also doing such an act of stewardship because so many of these artists who you're shining your light upon, many of them did go unappreciated, I think, in their own time. And I also think there's something very magical about working with these, as you call them, ancestors and keeping their music and their magic alive. So I'm really, really dazzled by that. Thank you for sharing that with me. How gorgeous.
Yeah, thank you.
On that note, we're going to take another quick break and we'll be right back. This season of The Witch Wave is brought to you by Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab. For 20 years, indie scent artist Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab, known affectionately as BPAL, has been formulating perfume oils for each month's full moon, inspired by their colorful names and descriptions in historical almanacs. 2025 will be no exception. Look for their monthly launches called A Little Lunacy, which include not only these limited edition scents for fellow lunatics, but also an ongoing series of perfumes inspired by classical artworks, and some which raise funds for a variety of charitable causes. The lab's general catalog is teeming with perfume oils, hair gloss sprays, beard oils, and bath oils, which can be yours year-round, covering a truly bewildering range of scent types and inspirations that include cinema, Gothic literature, and occultism. To that end, BPAL recently brought back a recurring scent series called An Evening with the Spirits, drawing from legends and historical accounts of Victorian-era spiritualism. These haunting scents, such as Psychodynamic Discharge and the Fox Sisters, will remain in Black Phoenix Alchemy Lab's web shop well into 2025. Month by month, year by year, the lunacy continues at blackphoenixalchemylab.com. One of the most rewarding things about being a witch is sharing our practice with those who have honest questions about it. And in this new podcast, The Alchemist and the Academic, a seasoned witch introduces her practices to a close friend who happens to be a researcher and a bit of a skeptic, to see if he can find the alchemist and witch within. Here's more from them.
I'm Rebecca Finale, acupuncturist, alchemist, and witch.
And I'm Kurt Braddock, college professor and researcher.
When we first met, Kurt and I were on opposite ends of the spiritual spectrum, but he has always been curious about my witchcraft, eager to learn about my practices and rituals. On our new podcast, The Alchemist and the Academic, we bring these conversations to you, discussing everything from witchcraft and rituals to tarot to deities and everything in between.
On the pod, I learn about these phenomena by experiencing the wonders of the divine firsthand to open my eyes to the world beyond.
Whether you've been a long practicing witch or are new to the craft, we welcome you to The Alchemist and the Academic, where the spiritual meets the empirical.
Hi, Witch Wavers. I have exciting news. At long last, we have some new Witch Wave merch available for you now through TeePublic. We decided to go with TeePublic for our new Witch Wave merch because it is a print-on-demand site, which means you can get different variations of the Witch Wave logo printed on t-shirts, mugs, totes, stickers, magnets, notebooks. Oh my gods, the sky's the limit. And the shirts come in different styles and fabrics and colors and are available in sizes small through 5XL, so you can order whatever you'll feel you're most magical in. So head on over to witchwavepodcast.com/shop. Welcome back to the Witch Wave. And so where do you see your project taking you? Do you see yourself writing more music and creating more visual art? Do you also want to keep doing episodes? Like, what do you see in terms of intentions or next steps for this project?
Well, the art has become largely kind of this non-professional sphere, which is just my kind of church in a lot of ways. I'm surrounded by it in here, and I don't put much pressure on that practice at all to be anything or to evolve or to improve. It's just a space of freedom and play and inspiration. The American Museum of Paramusicology, I do have a couple of books in the works. One is almost done, called Unknowable Music, and that's before Secret Sound. I basically wrote these 20 to 40 page essays that were way too long and dense for anyone to really read or publish. And so the Secret Sound podcast was my version of concision and accessibility, trying to hone my language a little bit better.
Yeah.
So this book kind of goes back into some of those essays, which have been kind of tweaked and massaged a little bit. Again, looking at kind of Buddhist Bubblegum looked at Arthur Russell's use of Buddhism in his creative process. This book will kind of be 5 composers who have drawn from different traditions in their process. It's just kind of opening the fan. And I hope to do a historical overview of things in a subsequent book. But yeah.
How fabulous. Well, I cannot wait. And I desperately want to read your Arthur Russell book. I haven't gotten a chance to yet. It's been on my wish list forever. And I love his music.
So amazing.
And I guess I should ask, like, what made you start with Arthur Russell? Like, why was he such a guiding spirit for you?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, like I was really drawn to artists beyond any kind of stylistic concerns. When you encounter Arthur Russell, you pretty quickly learn that he's this chameleon of music.
I'll just jump in and say some people might be familiar with him as a cellist and a singer-songwriter, but then he does some electronic stuff. Like, he really is a transcendent of genre, as you say.
Oh, yeah. All over the map. And so for me, I was like just taking deep inspiration in his music and in that kind of iridescent quality that he has.
That's one of my favorite words. Iridescent, gorgeous. Yes, yes, yes.
I use it a lot. I love that word.
The best.
And that's, how I describe a lot of these people I love. But I was like, there's something connecting all these things, And I would see references to his Buddhism, but it was very superficial, or it just left me asking tons of questions. And then I was in New York. I was doing my grad work, and that led me to the archive, which was then in Audica Records' office. And he graciously allowed me to kind of sit in there and go through things. And I was like a kid in a candy store. Everything I thought was going to be there was there and more. And I just realized that he was kind of like George Harrison once said, he's trying to spiritually infiltrate pop music. And that was what Arthur was trying to do.
Oh, I love that.
And he did it so beautifully. The way he applied numerology, the way he applied astrology, the way he applied meditation and mantra was just so inspiring. And that's like with Arthur and a lot of the people I'm drawn to people who have a creative engagement with these traditions.
Yes.
And that comes through, especially when we're working in the field of art or music. And Arthur's an incredible example of someone who creatively applied Buddhist teachings to his own nature.
Yes. Oh, so beautifully said. And he was gone far too soon. I think he passed away when he was it 40 or in his 40s, right?
42, I believe.
Oh, my goodness. But boy, did he leave us with such a gorgeous legacy. I understand that your father was an Episcopal priest, and this is like just a bananas synchronicity. So my husband's name is Matt, and his dad is an Episcopal priest.
Oh, nice.
So I probably know a little bit more about, or at least about the lingo than one might assume. I was raised Jewish, and so that world was very new to me when Matt and I first started dating. We've been together 20 years.
Yeah.
But having a father as a priest is a very specific experience. And I just wondered how that may have influenced, I'll just say broadly, your own spirituality, your own understanding of the metaphysical world.
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic. My dad was a huge influence on me, but not necessarily through Episcopalianism, but more through just who he was, because he never talked about the Bible or sin or heaven or any of those things. He talked about social justice. He talked about ecology. He talked about rights for women and immigrants and LGBTQ persons. And so those priorities, and aside from that, he was into joy and pleasure and all of these things that were, as a teenager, I like to say I walked away from the church instead of run. Because I couldn't argue with any of the things he was putting forward. It was more the church culture that pushed me away.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, his last words were, "There is joy in everything." I was like, geez.
Damn.
Yeah.
Wow. Going out on a high. That's pretty amazing.
But he was critical of meditation, which he thought was selfish. And
whoa.
He got my mother into Jungian work, but then kind of pulled away from it as well. One thing I've realized is that he was just this poster boy extrovert. He craved community at every instance and distrusted anyone who really engaged their interior too much. But as an introvert, I know there are benefits to both perspectives and so forth. So that was helpful. And also seeing kind of under the hood of the church was informative as well.
Yeah. Did your mom have any kind of influence on your spirituality?
Absolutely, yeah. She was teaching dream workshops in the church in the 80s or 70s. And she was the one that first encouraged me to pay attention to my dreams and keep a dream journal and all of that.
Wow.
All the Jungian stuff comes back to her. Yeah, I was very, very fortunate.
What a blessing. Is she still alive? Okay. And are you able to share your projects with her? Does she have any kind of foothold into your work?
She's not so eager to kind of get into the weeds with it, but she's extremely supportive. And I'm always kind of sharing her reflections on things. And yeah, I'm very fortunate that she can be supportive of it.
I love it. All right, Mama Marble.
Yeah, right.
This is kind of like a smushy question. I'm just curious, like, do you have any language that you feel comfortable using in regard to your own spiritual identity? Like, I call myself a witch, and it's for many reasons, and there's a lot of consideration behind that word. Do you have any words like that feel right in terms of your own spiritual identity?
I haven't boiled it down to one. The thing I keep coming back to is, as far as like what my calling is to really nurture the mystery. I just think it's extremely important that we nurture and create a space in our own consciousness that has no categories, that has no comparative force at all, that is unbounded. That's my drive. That's what connects me with that. That's what I get from dreams. Rahsaan Roland Kirk is one of my big inspirations, incredible musician, composer. People would ask him what his religion was, and he would say, mine is the religion of dreams. And I would say that's probably the closest thing to my perspective.
Oh my goodness, how exquisite. Well, listen, Matt, I know you're somebody that I could talk to for many, 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 many hours. And I genuinely hope this is the first of many more to come. I just have such respect and true adoration for what you make and what you do. So
thank you.
I'm just so thrilled to get to finally connect with you. In our final moments together, is there anything you want to make sure that people know about, that you have coming up? Can you tell us once again how people can be subscribers to the museum and so on? Anything you want to plug? Plug away.
Thank you. The main thing is the AMP journal and the subscription. That is something I devote a lot of time to with the interviews and the historical writing. I also try to have audio documentaries if I can, and share archives, and just lots of goodies in that direction.
And of course, the podcasts. And we didn't even talk about your other podcast, The Hidden Present.
The Hidden Present, yeah.
Yes.
That was a short-lived interview series that I'm still very proud of. Really beautiful people from different backgrounds talking about the role of intuition, imagination, and metaphysics in their work. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful talks with people.
And what is the best way for people to subscribe? It's just going to the website. Is that right? What was that URL?
Yeah, the URL is www.mattmarble.net/AMP.
Okay. And once again, if you want to hear all of the episodes of the Secret Sound podcast, that's where to do it. As you mentioned earlier, there are lots of freebies where people can get hooked, as I did, and as I'm sure many others did and will. Matt, thank you so much for doing this, and I really can't wait to continue the conversation.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's so nice to connect with you.
That's it for the show. Thank you again to Matt Marble for sharing his mystical musical makings with me. Do you have questions, feedback, need some witchly advice, or just want to share something magical that happened to you recently? Drop us an email or voice message over at witchwavepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you, and you just might make it on the Witch Wire. The Witch Wave is a Phantasmophile production written and produced by me, Pam Grossman. This episode was recorded, edited, and mixed by Josh Wilcox and/or Walter Nordquist and myself. Our theme music is the song Hand and I by Lycanthia. Our new Witch Wave logo was designed by Thunderwing. Special thanks go to Matt Freeman, Laura Antal, and Cece Pascal. You can check out information about this and other episodes on our website, and now buy Witch Wave merch at witchwavepodcast.com. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at witchwavepod, and you can check out my witch emoji for iPhone by going to witchemoji.com or downloading it in the App Store. My books, Waking the Witch from Gallery Books and Witchcraft from Taschen, are available everywhere now. And if you want more Witch Wave, or you would just like to support the show, please join us over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/witchwave. Thank you so much for listening. Witches are the future. I'll catch you next time on The Witch Wave.